Hi, I'm joined by Mr. Kieran Pradeep from Proofpoint, and we are going to discuss about some of the challenges that CISO community has been facing, and as to how the insider threat has become quite critical, and what kind of solution can actually help organization both across enterprises and government mitigate some of the challenges that we have seen during the pandemic. So, Mr. Pradeep, what we have been observing during the pandemic that the digital transformation agenda for most of the organization has increased like never before. A lot of digitization is happening, and that has actually increased the surface attack vector like anything. Would you like to share, based on your experience, what kind of trends you are witnessing in terms of the security deployment and adoption, and some of the challenges that organization are facing?
Sure. So what's been very interesting is with the whole work from home, with the way security has been moving, we've moved away from having corporate laptops, corporate devices, corporate all of this to a BYOD environment, right? But instead of BYOD, we've got BYOL, bring your own liability for the organization. So with that change, from a DLP, trying to understand, you can't just have agents anymore that just sit on people's machines. You need to look at it more holistically. You need to understand how people are behaving. Because the other biggest problem is, as we talked about earlier, people buy DLP because PwC or other auditing companies come in and say, you need to have a DLP solution. Right. They buy it. Are you enforcing anything? No, of course not. Because the classifications, the time required to understand all of your data is so big. And unless you're a new company starting today and you decided to make DLP your focus from day one, right, that's great. But most companies aren't. Most companies have existed for a long time. They've had a lot of data for a long time. So you got to classify all of this. So the approaches needs to be as different as the data right there. So trying to classify data, trying to understand that. We've found a better approach being around understanding the behavior of people, what they're doing with the data, look at those behaviors to trigger rules and events rather than looking at the data itself. Right. It takes a lot less time to classify as well.
As you mentioned about the kind of heterogeneity that we are witnessing, even in the IT environment of different companies. Look at the data center. I mean, there are a lot of applications, something maybe on-prem, something on cloud, and something in the hybrid all together. And among them, actually, the organization need to ensure that it has the agility from a security perspective. Uh, how do you look at how we can solve this problem of a kind of having heterogeneity within your IT environment, and that is creating a lot of complexity in terms of the security management?
It's a very good question. So let's think about this. All right. So if you are looking at IT and you're trying to get it all, so okay, one, there's no simple answer to this because some people need to have a hybrid environment. Some people can go all the way to the cloud. And some organizations still have a real need to be on-prem, right? You just have, it depends on the organization. So there's no one answer. So I'll give that caveat, right? With that in mind, right? It's making sure that you've got an ability, like you said, heterogeneous, you're trying to get everything to work on the same level. Right. It is
having an integrated platform where you could have a more visibility across your infrastructure.
But again, it comes back down to what you're trying to get visibility over, right? So visibility for the sake of visibility is useful. The biggest problem we've always had is that we get alerts from systems. Systems generate alerts. Right. When's the last time you've looked through a log, right? It's huge. So the visibility has to be contextual. The visibility has to be useful. Right. Simple visibility for the sake of visibility is no use, and it has to be actionable.
I mean, on the alert part, most of the people avoid it because many a times, largely alerts are false, and that is why actually it loses the relevancy and the interest of the administrator. What one thing that we witnessed during the pandemic also, the phishing attack increases like never before, and most of those things are happening via email, where individual were clicking some of the unwanted email. What Since you work across different organization and your solutions are work across different email gateways and try to secure the way the emails are delivered, can you share some of the thing that you are actually witnessing from a phishing perspective?
Wow. Yeah. So phishing again. It's again trying to understand what they're doing. So okay, when people are getting targeted in an organization, with understanding what they're being targeted with is as important as that they're being targeted in the first place. Reason being, if somebody's getting a remote access Trojan, if somebody's getting ransomware, somebody's getting malware, it's very different to somebody who's getting credential phishing, which is trying to steal their identity, right? So, yeah, definitely trying to understand that. Now, simply looking at it from an email perspective as well, it reduces the scope. You need to understand it from a CASB perspective, what privileges they have, what kind of, what's their propensity to click on certain things. Are they people who would give away credentials? Are there people who are actually really safe? So if they're really safe and they're getting targeted by stuff, probably don't need to focus on them as much as somebody who, even if they've got a little bit less privilege, if they're more likely to give away that what little they have, it's a problem, right? And so from a phishing perspective, look, and once the email blocking it, best case scenario, we blocked it, we don't have to worry about it, we don't have to deal with it. But people change, like the URLs are redirected. People, fraudsters don't send attachments because attachments can be sandboxed, they can be checked, all of the code is there. It's harder to bypass security system. When it's a URL, we may scan it today, you change it in 4 hours. So 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll send you a fraudulent email because I know you're asleep. 7:30, I know you're an early starter, you'll check your email. I will redirect that URL at that time. So again, going back, getting an alert, you wouldn't have got an alert to it previously. Now you need to know that, hey, that email has become bad. Now you need to know, hey, it's become bad and the user has clicked on it or didn't click on it. Once they've clicked on it, what's the code? What did it run? What did it try to execute? So that you can go to the endpoint and check, hey, did this code execute or did it not execute? The false positive rate, which you just talked about, that's key. A customer I spoke to, he spent 2.5 hours a day dealing with false positives. Once he spoke to us, we rolled out our solution. He said, for the first week, I spent 10 minutes a day. And he said, most of that was because I wanted to check the system was doing the right thing. So efficacy to block, but false positive. Otherwise, you're right. You keep getting extra alerts, getting phishing emails. If you keep getting false positives, you'll spend more time releasing emails, which is a business productivity issue. And some guy being, this guy was a project guy and all he was doing was email. Hated it. But he could go back to projects as soon as that changed.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks for the event.